You know, some places are just destined for the spotlight. And that's exactly the story of Panama. We're diving into how this one nation, defined almost entirely by its geography, became this incredible bridge between oceans, a crossroads for entire empires. It's a story that didn't just shape Panama, it literally changed the course of global trade for centuries.
So how in the world did a little 50-mile strip of land become one of the most important places on the entire planet? That's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to go all the way from its indigenous roots right up to the massive global waterway it controls now.
All right, so to really get it, we're going to walk through 5 key chapters of its history. We'll start way back when it was an indigenous crossroads, then jump to its role as the gateway for the Spanish Empire, cover its rocky union with Colombia, dig into the whole U.S. Canal Zone era, and finally, land in the present day, with Panama in full control. So let's start at the beginning, long before any Europeans had ever heard of this place.
Okay, Section 1, the Golden Isthmus. We're talking pre-Columbian life and culture here. We've got to go way back, long before it was this global choke point we know today. The Isthmus of Panama was already a super important and vibrant hub just for its own native peoples. So, this land was home to a pretty huge population. We're talking estimates from 200,000 all the way up to 2 million people. You had groups like the Cueva and Chibchan peoples, and they were really skilled farmers and hunters. But what's really amazing is the innovation. I mean, some of the absolute earliest pottery in all of the Americas was made right here. It just goes to show you, this place was a buzzing center of culture and trade, connecting different groups long before it started connecting oceans.
All right, next up, Spain's Pacific Gateway. And this is where everything changes. With the arrival of the Spanish, the isthmus was about to go from being a regional hub to becoming the absolute linchpin of one of the biggest empires on Earth.
And the Spanish had a name for it that says it all. Castilla del Oro, Golden Castile. I mean, that wasn't just some fancy name. It was basically their mission statement. They weren't seeing a complex culture or a thriving ecosystem. Nope, they saw gold. They saw a shortcut to unbelievable riches.
And boy, did they move fast. After a first look in 1501, the really big moment came in 1513. A guy named Vasco Núñez de Balboa, with help from local guides, slogged his way across the jungle and became the first European to ever see the Pacific Ocean from the Americas. This was a total game changer. Just 6 years later, bam, Panama City is founded. The isthmus was now officially the Spanish Empire's gateway to the Pacific.
And this route you see here, it became the literal lifeblood of the Spanish Empire. All that silver from the mines in Peru would sail up to Panama City, then it was dragged overland on this special road, the Camino Real, over to the Atlantic side. Just to put in perspective for you, an estimated 60% of all the gold that Spain got from the New World passed through this one tiny little isthmus. Incredible. Okay, let's jump forward to the 19th century. Now, after 300 years, Spain's grip is starting to loosen. Panama is about to break free. But, well, independence isn't exactly a smooth ride. It leads to a whole new and pretty tough chapter, this long, messy union with its neighbors.
So it all kicks off with this declaration, the Grito de la Villa de los Santos. And pretty soon after, on November 28, 1821, Panama officially tells Spain, we're done. But here's the twist. Instead of becoming its own country right away, its leaders decide to join up with Simón Bolívar's brand new Republic of Gran Colombia. You know, they were hoping for stability, and they were really inspired by Bolívar's big vision for South America.
Yeah, but this union was never a great fit. It was rocky from the start. Over the next 80 years, Panama tried to leave, like, multiple times. They even managed to be their own independent state for about a year in the 1840s. But the really crucial thing to see here is the new player on the scene, the United States. That 1846 treaty gave the U.S. rights to cross the isthmus, and more importantly, the power to send in troops. And once that transcontinental railroad was finished in 1855, well, Panama became more strategic than ever, and the U.S. got even more involved.
And all of this, it's leading us right to the single most important event in Panama's entire history. I mean, an event so huge, it would literally create the modern country of Panama as we know it. We're talking about the canal.
So people tried to build this thing twice. First up were the French in the 1880s. This was led by the same guy who built the Suez Canal, so hopes were high. But it was an absolute train wreck. Disease, landslides, bankruptcy, total failure. Then the United States steps in. You've got President Teddy Roosevelt just determined to get it done. And they succeed where the French failed. Sure, the engineering was brilliant, but their real secret weapon? Sanitation. They figured out how to wipe out the mosquitoes carrying yellow fever and malaria. That changed everything.
But there was just one little problem. The isthmus was still technically part of Colombia, and the Colombian government looked at the treaty the U.S. offered and said, no thanks. Well, Teddy Roosevelt was not going to take no for an answer. You can see his justification right here in this quote. He basically said, look, Colombia can't keep order here. For the good of the world, we have to step in.
So the U.S. pivoted. It decided to back a Panamanian independence movement. A French investor from that failed attempt, a guy named Bruno Varilla, even helped pay for the whole thing. And when Colombia sent troops to put down the rebellion, a U.S. Navy gunboat just showed up and blocked them. And just like that, on November 3, 1903, Panama separates from Colombia and the U.S. recognizes it as a new country basically overnight. The whole thing happened in a flash.
And just a few weeks after that, this treaty gets signed. And you have to understand, this is the heart of the issue for the next century. It gave the U.S. total control, in perpetuity, meaning forever, over a 10-mile wide chunk of land right through the middle of the country, the Canal Zone. So think about that. Panama got its independence from Colombia, but at the exact same time, it signed away control over the most important part of its own territory.
So this brings us to the next chapter, reclaiming sovereignty. And it's all about this central paradox. Panama is technically its own country, but it's a country with a foreign power controlling a strip of land right down its middle. The whole rest of the 20th century is basically the story of Panama fighting to get that land back.
And man, it was a long fight. You can see it laid out here. That whole in perpetuity thing was a huge source of tension for decades. It all came to a head in 1964 with the Martyrs' Day riots. Panamanian students were killed during a protest, all because they wanted to fly their own flag in the Canal Zone. It was a national tragedy, but it galvanized everyone. And finally, in 1977, a breakthrough. President Jimmy Carter and Panama's leader Omar Torrijos signed treaties that for the first time set an actual date for the handover.
But, there's always fine print, and the 1977 treaties had a really important clause. Even while agreeing to give the canal back, the U.S. held on to one key power, the right to intervene with its military, forever, to protect the canal's neutrality. So, Panama was getting control, but the U.S. definitely wasn't walking away completely.
And the road to that final handover was still pretty rocky. The 1980s were a dark time, dominated by the military dictator Manuel Noriega. Things got so bad with the U.S. that in 1989, America launched a full-scale invasion called Operation Just Cause and removed him from power.
So, after all that turmoil, we finally arrive at the modern era, the crossroads today. After 100 years of foreign control and political upheaval, Panama was finally ready to take the reins. And what a moment it was. At noon, on December 31st, 1999, the very last day of the century, it happened. The American flag came down in the Canal Zone for the final time, and Panama took complete control of the canal. After almost a century, the crossroads finally belonged to the country it ran through.
And that brings us right up to today. Panama has done an incredible job running and even expanding the canal, turning it into the engine of a really strong economy. But the story's not over, right? Global trade is always changing, new powers are rising, and that little isthmus is just as strategic as it ever was. Which leaves us with this big question for the future. As a new era of global competition heats up, can Panama really remain the master of its own destiny? It's a heck of a question, and the answer is going to define Panama's next 100 years. If you found this history of the world's crossroads was fascinating, we do tons of these deep dives in our Quick Country Histories playlist, so definitely go check that out. And hey, subscribe to Notebook Summaries so you don't miss the next one.